Hey, welcome to The Acting Edge. I'm Teja Nicoli, and today we're going to be talking about general auditioning tips. Look for our other 2 episodes on monologues and cold read auditions as well. The first thing to keep in mind is that an audition is technically a job interview, and you want to treat it that way, whether you're getting paid or not. The biggest piece of advice for what to wear is to wear something appropriate. Wear something you're comfortable with and maybe something that lends itself to the character. You might want to stay away from something that's a little too flashy because it might end up making you feel nervous because you're not comfortable in what you're wearing, and that might rub off on your performance, and that would not be a good thing. One really important thing is to be reliable. Follow through and do things you say you're gonna do. Be prepared, both mentally and physically. Make sure you have everything you need ready to go. Be on time or be early. Don't be late. Being late's only gonna make you feel nervous, and it looks very unprofessional. Try to keep a positive, confident mood when you're entering and exiting the audition space. This might go without saying, but make sure you have a nice, firm handshake. Make sure that you read cold read lines ahead of time. You want to make sure you're as familiar as possible with them, whether you get them a week ahead of time or the day before or just a few minutes before you go in for your audition. If you're able, highlight the lines that you're given when you get there so that it's easier for you to follow along when you're auditioning. That means you might want to bring along a highlighter, and you also want to just confirm that it's okay that you mark up their papers and scripts if you're giving it back to them at the end of the audition. Here's another one that I want to mention because I think it's really important, even though it seems like it might be common sense. When you're reading lines with someone else and you're holding your paper, you might want to use your finger or your thumb as a marker so that when you look away to react or interact with the person that you're speaking with, when you look back at the paper to read your next line, your finger's right there and it's pointing out what you're supposed to read next. Make sure that you look up from the paper when you're reading. Don't hide behind the paper. Make sure you're holding it away from your face so that the audition panel is really able to see your full performance. Make sure when you enter the audition space that it's obvious to you where you're supposed to be when you're doing your audition. Sometimes there's a taped X on the floor. Sometimes there is no camera, so it's obvious that you would perform on a space that looks like a stage. Whatever the case may be, if it's not obvious to you, make sure you ask. When you're auditioning with a monologue, you want to find a focus spot. Something that you look at and reference as the person you're talking to throughout your entire monologue. Just pick an inanimate object, somewhere that's probably around eye level for you, and make sure you're consistent with it. Make sure it doesn't move, and make sure when you do talk to that person that it's always that same spot. And when you're reading a scene, you do want to look at and interact with anybody who's reading with you because they are in the scene with you. But again, same rule, don't look at or interact with anybody who's not reading with you or not in the scene with you. Whenever you're auditioning, whether it's for a monologue or a scene, you want to always give a moment before and a moment after. And what that means is just take a couple of seconds to kind of get into character at the beginning and a couple of seconds to hang on to that emotion at the end of your performance. Make sure when you're done with your audition that you thank the audition panel. A lot of times after an audition, the audition panel might ask you if you have any questions. And a great question to ask if you don't already know the answer would be to ask if they know when the casting will be complete. Here are a few don'ts as far as auditions go. Now, occasionally you might be asked to do one of these things specifically, and when you are asked specifically to do these things, of course do them. But for the most part, most of the time, these are big don'ts when you're auditioning. Don't use props. I know, it seems odd. Now, anything that you have on you, like a jacket or glasses or a watch, things like that, of course you can reference those and use those, but I wouldn't bring anything in specifically, anything that seems cumbersome, like a sword or a broom or anything like that. Just things that are already kind of with you. Don't speak in any accents, unless you are specifically asked to. You just speak the way you normally speak every day. Don't look at anyone who's not in the scene while you're actually auditioning. We kind of talked about that before, but it does bear repeating. Don't look into the camera, unless, again, you are specifically asked to. That's something you just don't do. Don't give any more information than you're asked for. You don't want to elaborate on what your monologue's about or anything like that. You just want to jump right into it. If they have any questions, they'll definitely ask you. Don't acknowledge mistakes that you made. If you can, the best thing to do is kind of improv your way through it and get back on track and continue. Stay in character, stay in the moment, and don't show any mistakes, because there are no mistakes if you choose not to show them. If it's a huge mistake and it's bleedingly obvious, then in that case you might want to, be your own judge and decide if it's something that you really should continue to go through. Otherwise, if it's a small mistake, you miss a word or a sentence or even a couple of sentences, you can always paraphrase and work your way through it, iron it over, and nobody may ever even know the difference. Except you. Don't get discouraged. And that's one of the hardest things to do because this industry is rife with competition. I once heard that the worst case scenario after any audition is that you leave the audition without a job that you never had in the first place. And it's true. What's wonderful about it is every time you audition, you get one more experience auditioning in front of people, and that is valuable in itself. Thank you for watching The Acting Edge. I'm Teja Nicoli, and I'll catch you next time.